John 3:9. Respondit Nicodemus, et dixit ei, quomodo possunt haec fieri? Nicodemus replied and said to him, how can these things be or happen? Nicodemus's reply is perhaps what many of us would have replied in his shoes. He's thoroughly confused about what Jesus is saying, but we shouldn't be thoroughly confused about his Latin because it's fairly straightforward here. Respondit Nicodemus et dixit ei is all quite straightforward and easy. We've seen this many times. Ei, dative singular of our personal pronoun, the person to whom the response is being given. Let's look at quo modo. You may notice if you split this word up here in the middle that it's simply composed of quo modo, literally by what means in the ablative case. And over time, the Romans found that they used this word so frequently that it was simply usually abbreviated into one word and written as such. How? By what means? How is this done? Possunt, our third person plural, present active indicative of posse. How are these things, neuter plural nominative, how are these things, namely these things that Jesus has just been talking about, that you need to be born again, how can these things happen? How can they be? How can they become reality? Fieri is worth pausing over just for a moment. Fio, in the first person singular, factus as the participle, and fieri, the infinitive, supply the passive system of a verb you probably know well, facio, facere, to do, to make. In the passive, however, its forms seem to have been supplied in antiquity by a mixture of forms derived from facio, facere, and forms derived from this other verb, which sort of merged with facio to produce this hybrid, which was used very commonly in ancient times. Fieri can mean to become, to happen, to occur, all of those different meanings. So here, how can these things be would be an acceptable English translation. We could also say, how could these things happen? How could these things come about that you're describing? It doesn't make any sense to me. In other words, that's what he's saying. This seems impossible, we might say. And this is a frequent way to express oneself in Latin. In fact, if you're working this into your own Latin speech, you can memorize the phrase fieri non potest, that is to say, impossibile est. It cannot happen. It cannot be. This is useful as an exclamation. It's also useful in everyday speech.